So welcome back, everyone. Yes, today we're taking a look at updated, in-depth impressions of Crimson Desert, kind of like an early review of what's going on with this game. We are going over all of it. This is far more in-depth than my previous early review video. So yes, buckle up. We have a ton of details to go over, and we're looking at Digital Foundry's beautiful gameplay here. This is, of course, running on the PS5 Pro. We're going to be rotating between basically a lot of the different versions, PC, and also, yes, the base PS5 as well. So a lot of really cool stuff here to go over. And I say we dive straight in, but you know what? If you guys are new, don't hesitate to smack that subscribe button. Would love to have you guys join the OWG family. But let's do this here right now, starting out with some of the positives here, and we'll rotate back and forth in a balanced manner here between positives and more critique, more negatives here. So yes, we have a witness system, of course, in the game where you observe abilities to learn new moves. However, there was what was described as control bloat. Digital Foundry noted the game attempts to map nearly 30 different inputs to a standard controller, leading to frequent miss inputs. So that's something that you do have to worry. But the combat really shines in that it includes pro wrestling moves like power bombs, as refreshing break from standard sword swinging. On the positives, you know what? We have archery. The aerial Deadeye archery was called pure cinematic joy during large-scale skirmishes. Cannot wait to try that out. And also, we have, of course, lock-on friction. So several previewers found that the target system, the lock-on system, was fidgety, especially when fighting faster flying enemies. I had a feeling that the flying enemies might be really, really annoying as we get into some of the gameplay here, from Digital Foundry. They had a section here where they went to what is called Bug Hill. And I told you guys when I first saw this, I have a feeling these flying things will probably be very annoying. And it seems like from some of the early impressions, that is the case. But we also have some details here about the dash and parry system. And this is actually where we have some good news. So the ability to dash or parry mid-animation was held as the gold standard for responsiveness. Very, very good news right there. Now, there is a bit of a negative in regards to the stealth simplicity. So critics noted that the stealth mechanics are bare bones, apparently, compared to the deep melee system. So, yeah, I have to ask you guys, are you expecting to go in here to play this game as a pure stealth experience? Is that something that you would like to do? Play it perhaps as like maybe a thief? Let me know if that's something you guys are wanting as a playstyle. Now, also, we have the posture breaking system was praised for encouraging aggressive tactical play, especially in those boss battles. However, we have AI stun lock issues on higher difficulties. Enemies can unfairly chain attacks, leaving the player unable to react for several seconds. Now, we do have each weapon class from heavy axes to spears has a distinct visceral thud that players found satisfying. However, there is some elite moves that are so well hidden apparently that it is feared that players will finish the game without even seeing them. I'm hoping that that is not true. And maybe there are some clues you could find throughout the world where you can actually find those skills. But again, this is going to be interesting to see how this works, because a lot of your upgrades for Cliff and finding new weapons is going to be about you exploring. But maybe they want each experience to be different. And they did say that they want the community to kind of like talk to each other about what they have found, how they found it, and that sort of thing. Which, if you come from the world of like Elden Ring, that's actually a really, really cool thing, getting with the community. Also, this is kind of one of the first times I've heard about this, that, the game was complimented for its dynamic gore and is considered like a gritty R-rated type experience. So that's actually really cool. And there is kind of like a negative here. During Abyss Magic usage, the screen can become so cluttered with sparks that it's hard to see incoming hits. So they are kind of referencing this to perhaps like a particle overload. And IGN felt that the opening hour was apparently too slow and didn't reflect the high-octane action shown in the trailers. That's an interesting take. Now, some of us might like kind of like a slow burn build-up where it builds meaning. And if this one does it well, it really does make the game feel like it has purpose throughout the journey. Even like if there isn't exactly super intense story details going on, yeah, you have this kind of like built history within. Assassin's Creed 2, in my opinion, was one of the best that did that at the beginning of the game, set up that revenge tale. Maybe they're trying to do this with this one. Also in combat, dual wielding speed was complemented. Swapping to dual axes mid-combo provides high adrenaline shift in playstyle. We also have the shield toss. Damien's shield throwing mechanic was highlighted as a standout range combat tool. However, stamina limits was something that was eyeballed here. Early game stamina is severely restrictive, apparently, making it hard to execute longer combos. So you're going to, again, have to upgrade Cliff here. Now, we do have some environmental interaction. Throwing enemies into spikes or off cliffs was praised for adding a tactical sandbox feel, but there is some input lag that was noted on base hardware. They noticed slight delay when using the telekinetic whip in dense areas. And I'm assuming that is talking about this right here, the base PS5 version of the game, which you can see it running here. You can get up to 60 frames per second. Unfortunately, the video that was uploaded to the official PlayStation Japan YouTube channel, which you could find, of course, in the description down below, was kind of capped at 30 frames per second. We'll be going over more of the technical details later on in the video. But yes, the PlayStation base version are still looking pretty good, all things considering. Now, they're not going to look exactly like their counterparts in terms of like the PC and the PS5 Pro, so just know that heading into this. Now, also, something really cool, we have non-lethal arrest. The ability to tackle and tie up bounties was praised by role-play heavy gamers, so if you don't want to kill people, yeah, you do have the option of going in there non-lethal. Difficulty spikes was also noted here. Rushing the main story leads to brutal walls that force players into unintended side grinding. So yeah, oh boy. So I'm kind of curious to see how you guys take to that one. Now, we do have the slow motion clink of a perfect block was described as one of the best audio visual rewards in gaming. Hell yes. There's also mount combat. Fighting from horseback was described as surprisingly fluid and cinematic. However, unclear buffs was cited here. The UI icons for active skills are too tiny and vague to be useful during chaotic fights. Now, the telekinetic throws, using magic to hurl trees at giants, was called wildly empowering. Precision grabbing is also really important to note here. Attempting to pick up specific objects in a pile of loot is clunky and imprecise. So yeah, I've heard that several times. So hopefully they could patch up some of this stuff. Now, there is elemental infusion, so you can combine frost and fire on the sword. And that was noted for deeply strategic satisfaction. So that is very cool. Some elite bosses, by the way, recover their stagger meter frustratingly fast, leading to war of attrition fights. But there is this aerial meteor strike. So the plunging attack from the glider was cited as a top tier spectacle move. Yeah, it looks really impressive in the trailers as well. And it was also talked about how there is no difficulty slider. Let me know how you guys are still feeling about that one. I do wish that there were difficulty settings. You know, I feel like it makes the game more balanced in case you get into like the most impossible part ever. You could just tone down the difficulty. But you know what? Some outlets did criticize the lack of a story mode, making the game inaccessible to more casual players. So that's not this type of game, but it is definitely not as hardcore as something like a Souls game or Elden Ring. So that is something to absolutely note. Now also, character swapping, hell yes. So mid-combat transitions between Cliff and other mercenaries was praised for being pretty much seamless as well. And it kind of works like GTA from what we've heard from other impressions, where you can actually swap to a character that is in the middle of a fight or just enjoying the view out in the open world like you could see here. Now, we got to talk about fighting the same type of enemy over and over again. That was something that several previewers did mention, and some people even called it narratively lazy. So I'm kind of curious about the enemy variety. But from the bosses that we did see, it looks really impressive with the bosses at the very least. Now, the 10 mythic hunts were praised as excellent high-tier in-game challenges for the post-game. Some people got to peek into that. But there is complex skill tree. So Digital Foundry noted that the skill tree's lack of a search or filter makes it hard to navigate. I really hope they patch in some of this stuff. Now, also, jumping and climbing feels physics-based and weighty, similar to Red Dead Redemption 2. That's awesome. And there are some physics glitches to note here. So the physics engine can cause enemies to launch into orbit or clip through floors. And yeah, that's going to be something to be expected with like a monstrous size open world game like this, to have some hiccups like that. And it was also mentioned, and I did see that there were cases where some animations were happening above the actual environment. For example, one character was swimming, despite them not even being in the river. So yeah, I did see that on one of the gameplay clips. Now let's talk about the world and exploration and pacing, shall we? So yes, the open world, of course, is beautiful, but what about the map scale? It's truly massive, even dwarfing games like Skyrim and apparently Red Dead Redemption 2. But there are some empty sections. Some wilderness areas feel barren and devoid of wildlife. But I have my own opinion about this. I think it's important for pacing reasons to have downtime when exploring throughout the open world. You do not want the open world to be just completely cluttered of NPCs or feeling like a crowded city. That makes the cities less important. They feel like they don't matter as much. So I think it is important to have beautiful areas like this where you can explore. Yeah, that's something that I absolutely cherish in a lot of these open world games. Just finding a view, for example, can be really, really nice. Now, also, one of the big positives out of a lot of these previews was the dragon fight. So flying was described by Games Radar, for example, as peak traversal experience of 2026. And you have maneuvers as well with the dragons. But, on the side of technical stuff going on here, high-speed traversal triggers aggressive pop-in for trees and rocks on all platforms. Apparently that includes PC. Again, you got to remember that we're running this on no day one patch. Now, it was also mentioned the seamless interiors. We got to talk about that. Entering any house or castle without a loading screen was praised for total immersion. But there is some navigation confusion to be had. The lack of breadcrumb system makes navigating dense forests frustrating for some. And this is, again, the game that's not going to hold your hand. That's not its intention whatsoever. And that's something that I personally like. I'm tired of all the yellow paint, any type of systems that look like a GPS trail or something. I really dislike that big time. And I want something that's more natural. And I look to games like the Ghost franchise, Yoshima, Ghost Yote, that has wind blowing and it's not UI driven exactly. It's more natural. That's something I absolutely love. And I wish more games would take to that. Now, we also have the Abyss Islands, the floating sky ruins. They were called visual marvels that offer the game's best puzzles. However, I have heard that some of those puzzles can be absolutely annoying as hell. Now, stamina gating is a thing, apparently. Climbing is painfully slow until you find enough abyss fragments to upgrade. So those abyss fragments at the beginning of the game especially are going to be super important. Weather physics are definitely going to be a thing. You got real-time snow accumulation on the character's armor that was noted for its physical realism. However, some people feel like this is a generic fantasy. A few critics argued the art direction in Green Forest regions looks too similar to every other RPG. And from what I'm seeing, the game looks absolutely beautiful. So I don't know. That's a tough one right there. I'm not too sure what they're expecting from that. I feel like this is more of the realism-centric medieval fantasy. It's not going to lean into fantasy, you know what I mean? It's not going to be looking like, Dragon Age Valgard, for example. It's going to be more realistic. And clearly, verticality is a thing here. The ability to parkour almost up any surface makes the world feel truly alive and 3D. They did mention shallow water. Underwater exploration was described as underdeveloped compared to the land and sky, and I'm 100% okay with that. This is not like an underwater game. Go play a game about hunting for sharks or something. And one thing that was cited as extremely immersive was just watching the NPCs on their schedules. We've heard some controversy around the NPCs, whether or not they're standing around or what have you. But apparently, there's been a lot of compliments about that more recently. And we also got to talk about side quests. So some side quests lack a narrative prompt, leading to objectives that feel like random chores or really had no purpose at all. There are some hidden passages, by the way, with destructible walls leading to legendary gear that were called classic RPG highs. So I cannot wait to find and discover that sort of thing. In some of the smaller villages, you may encounter the same 4 character models repeating multiple times. So that's something to note. And the soundscape itself was compared favorably to The Witcher 3 for its ethereal atmospheric quality. And you got to remember there's a banking system in this where you can exchange currencies. I personally, I'm down for it. I cannot wait to try that. And it makes each region feel unique. Like they have their own politics, their own economics. Yeah, that's going to be very, very cool. It's also described about the 573 different locations. The sheer volume of discovering these locations is just absolutely crazy. Now, there is one thing they did say here, Ubisoft-style outpost. It was noted from some reviewers that it felt like the clear the bandit camp loop has returned and becomes repetitive after 30 hours. So, kind of curious to see how they keep this fresh. Like I told you guys, I'm hoping they have really cool side missions that lead you into those outposts and really matter narratively. That for me really helps my brain when things feel like they can get redundant. So I'm crossing my fingers they have some cool stuff there. So it doesn't feel like all I'm doing is clearing camps. Now we also have armored bear mounts. You can ride a bear. It was cited as an ultimate power move for crossing the map. Now, some people did note some stiff dialogue, although I have heard the opposite, so it's kind of mixed here. I have a feeling this game is going to be a mixed bag in some ways, but some of the NPC writing often felt stilted and poorly translated, according to some early impressions. Now, one thing that I love is the reactive foliage that was highlighted, and a lot of players did as well, making the game feel alive, and it looks like it doesn't hardly even affect the engine, which is pretty cool. And we also have RPG fans were disappointed by the lack of romance or social bonds with NPCs. It would be cool if that sort of thing did exist. I'm not going to lie. Yeah, it would be really, really nice. Despite this being a game that has a definitive ending and no choice and consequence, really, still, that sort of thing would be cool. But that's not what this game is about. You got to remember that this game is more leaning into, I would say, the Dragon's Dogma 2 direction. Now, this is actually pretty cool. There are regional accents, so the distinct voice acting for different cultures was praised for its world building. I love it. Now, the guards are apparently pretty aggressive. The bounty system was called Unbalanced, with guards attacking for minor accidents. Okay, so my take on this, I love this. It makes the world feel dangerous and realistic, and you have to be more careful about living in this world. It reminds me a little bit of another game that you guys know that I've been playing a lot of, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. In that game, you can't even walk into another person's house. In most RPGs, they'll be like, "Oh, hi, how are you doing?" But in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, they're like, "What in the hell are you doing in here? Get out!" And that's something that I love about those type of open world games. And I hope they have a little bit of that in Crimson Desert. It makes it feel more real, like you can't mess around too much. Also, we have, yes, pet interactions. The ability to pick up and pet dogs and cats was a wholesome highlight. But it was also said that there are apparently empty interiors. So while cities are dense, remote cabins are often copy and pasted and hollow. Can't expect everything to be super handcrafted, as long as the core city experience is like super handcrafted and detailed and things like that. But I do hope that there are some nifty, unique things that you can find out in the open world. Now, of course, seeing the floating ruins from anywhere in the world provides a constant sense of mystery. So a lot of people really love that. But it was also noted that while the world is open, the plot is strictly on rails with no major choices. Let me know how you guys feel about that. And there is noting that there is some travel fatigue. So crossing the map without a flying mount was called exhausting due to the scale. Seems like the one way you're going to want to explore this game is region by region and go outward, and it seems like it's going to be encouraged that way anyway, considering some of these regions that you bump into and explore naturally are going to be pretty damn tough. So you're going to have to maybe take a step back, stay in a certain region, and then you will be able to progress once you find some really badass equipment or something like that. Now, yes, let's talk about technical performance and graphics. We're going to go over all of it right now. But I did want to note, yes, the PS5 base footage has been revealed. And it's looking really sharp, by the way, on the base PS5, as you can see right here. It is looking really, really nice. But, we also have gameplay showcased on the PC, which you're seeing right here, and right here, the PS5 Pro. So yeah, it's looking really good all around. I feel like they did a great job, I guess you would say compromising from like PC down to the base PS5. I feel like people are going to be pretty happy. At least I'm crossing my fingers from what we have seen so far. The big positive here is, of course, this technical juggernaut known as the Black Space engine. This is not Unreal Engine 5, so that is a huge positive. Now, also, we have ray tracing. The lighting in caves was described as the best currently available in gaming. And yeah, their lighting, again, is just crazy good. Whether it's nighttime, whether there's, actual wind, what have you, happening in the environment, the lighting engine is just so strong. Now, Digital Foundry did notice ghosting artifacts in high contrast areas, so that's something to note. And you got to consider, this is a big game. It's 150 gigabytes, so we'll see if they can narrow that down. We've seen games that have been able to reduce the size, but it would be nice if they can actually reduce that size. Now, PSSR upscaling, AI upscaling on PS5 Pro delivers near native 4K clarity at 60 frames per second. Let's take a look at that real quick. And the frame rate is overall pretty stable until you get to, that bug land right here. Then you see what happens. That was one of the big issues that Digital Foundry did note. Again, no day one patch. But again, you have to consider this. The new PSSR 2.0 just released for PlayStation 5 Pro, and they did confirm that it is Crimson Desert ready. So cannot wait to see the updated PSSR because I'm hearing really great things so far, even beyond what, was shown officially from PlayStation. Now, one of the negatives that was highlighted is that it was reported for PC that users said the game pushes hardware to limit causing perhaps maybe high heat. Hopefully that's not the case. And we have instant SSD loads. The lack of loading screens between regions was called transformative. Volumetric clouds. Let's talk about the clouds in the skybox, which, by the way, looks stunning. So flying through these volumetric clouds was described as a next-gen visual milestone, so cannot wait to get on the Dragon. Now, there's some default motion blur complaints. Some testers found the blur nauseating and recommended turning it off immediately, so something to consider. Also, when it comes to facial animations, it was actually praised as nuanced with the expressions and things like that in cutscenes. Now, some things about RT noise. In low light, visual grain can appear around foliage and shadows. It was also complemented with the loading times. Loading a save file is blazingly fast on NVMe drives. However, while characters look great, distant mud and rocks can look dated in some areas, so that's something to note. And then, of course, one thing that I do love are the cloaks. They flap in the wind naturally and was noted as, unrivaled realism was the quote. Now, the high floor PC specs means many older rigs potentially cannot run this, but I've also heard some mixed reactions with that one. I want to see how this runs on mid-tier PCs and those lower-end PCs, considering also de novo DRM is going to be packaged with this. So you got to consider that. That's definitely a negative. But from what we have seen from Digital Foundry and what they have shown on PC, everything was apparently running with de novo active. So that is really good news. Global illumination is probably one of my favorite phrases, even more so in my opinion than ray tracing. I think you could do a lot with global illumination. And look at even like Assassin's Creed Unity as like the prime example. But sunlight bouncing off indoor surfaces was called breathtaking. They've done a fantastic job with, again, I cannot compliment their lighting engine enough. But anyway, yeah, we got to move on to base customization, the RPG systems and management. So yeah, I say we start out with base customization. So rebuilding the Greymane HQ gives a rewarding sense of progression. I bet it does. I cannot wait to get in there. And there is storage limit issue. So the lack of shared camp storage was called a massive quality of life oversight. This is according to more of like an early leak. I'm still waiting to see if this actually pans out to be true, but apparently it is true. And, there was another Korean YouTuber that said, hey, inventory management becomes less of an issue as you upgrade your inventory. But he even said, from what he saw, there's no storage. I really hope that changes in the future for this game. If that pans out to be actually true, that'd be pretty wild to have not like a storage container. However, Will Powers, again, I have to cite all the sources here for balance. Will Powers of Pearl Abyss did say that, if you have a house, there is some sort of perhaps way to store things. Yeah, I don't know if anyone actually bought a house yet or anything like that have reviewed the game so far, but cross my fingers that there is storage. So yeah, this is tied into your base. You have mercenaries that you can dispatch, sending teams on raids. This is praised for making them feel like active characters in your world. But, something that felt like it was overloading the RPG systems, was having 300 plus recipes for cooking, and felt overwhelming for some of the more casual players. But there is bounty tracking. So finding targets based on verbal clues was noted as actually challenging and rewarding. However, there is a skill respec system. So the ability to reset your tree for gold was praised for build experimentation. That's something I personally like. It definitely leans more into, I guess you would call it more casual play, but also friendly to the player as well. Now, there's a debt system. Being forced into bank debt for crimes was called punishingly realistic. I love it. Some people might not, but I think that's very, very cool. I think there could be some really interesting like playthroughs around that. There's skill-based fishing and was cited as surprisingly addictive. But, one thing that was praised was this regional chaos. You guys know that there's factions in the game, and you could see their influence throughout the world map. And it was noted that you'll see a lot of stuff change. There's this world state, and you'll see, peace brought to these lands if you have a successful battle or campaign, or perhaps you'll be hated over here. So yeah, there's some really, really cool, neat little details around the world states. We got to talk about bosses. So boss variety is extremely impressive in this game. So that was one of the biggest takeaways, but there's also apparently boss walls. So early enemies are unforgiving walls as they're being described for new players. Again, if you run into that, you're going to have to probably take a step back and find some equipment to take them on. Now, again, what's really cool is being able to swap between these multiple playable characters. Each one of them have their own kind of like traversal mechanics as well. But apparently this is a GTA style swap. The camera will zoom out during character swaps, and it's called flawless, which is very, very cool. However, with your companions in tight ruins, apparently companions can occasionally get stuck on walls. So that's something you're going to have to really look out for. And late game enemies were criticized for being bullet sponges. So hopefully they don't get like too bullet spongy and too tanky. Yeah, that's a little bit of a worry. There is breakable armor though. So seeing a boss's plating shatter under fire was highly satisfying, as they said. One thing some of you guys might not like, yes, this game doesn't hold your hand, and sometimes finding the approximate area for quests was called tedious. So I'm hoping this isn't done just to pad the time with the game. That's something that I always look for, and cross my fingers that's not the case here. And there's some worries, of course, about the launch stability of the game. The game definitely is not perfect. From what we have seen, they have optimized the game. You got to remember that. But there are still some glitches, some pop-ins, and things that do happen still. And we have yet to know what the day one patch will have. We don't have those patch notes yet. So that's something to consider. Now, what Pearl Abyss did officially say about the launch window and like the week or month afterwards is that they will be rolling out patches consistently to support the game. It's not like they're going to release the game and be done with it. They'll definitely be supporting it. But yeah, overall, bouncing back and forth between the positives and the negatives, overall, I am still absolutely hyped for this game. I got to control my hype levels here. So yes, I have it preloaded, ready to go on my PC. And let me know if you guys are ready for this one. Let me know also what platform you decided to play on. So let me know what you think about these early impressions, kind of like early reviews. And then, yeah, stay tuned, guys, because I'm going to have more news and updates for you. I'll be tracking all of the patches and the updates, DLC, changes to the game, what have you. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned here for more, and I will see you all next time. Take care.